Okay, so guys, welcome back to Digital Artcast. And today is another interview, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by Jort. Say hello, Jort.
Hi, hello.
Hello. Jort has been kind enough to give up his time to talk to us on the podcast about everything concept art related, and we're probably just going to dive straight into it. Jort, kind of bring people into the frame of your education and your past if they don't know it very well. You know, where did you get started in games, and what really brought you into concept art as a medium? Where did you kind of learn that that was the thing you wanted to do early on?
Yeah, I started out just at uni. I didn't really know what I wanted, like what I wanted to study and stuff. And I always liked games, I always liked drawing and art. So I just entered this game art school without ever having opened Photoshop or like any 3D program. Like I didn't know the concept world at all.
Wow.
I did a lot of digital, or sorry, a lot of traditional painting, like oil painting, acrylics, and yeah, it was just a stroke of luck, I suppose, that I really loved it, like from the first moment, and that's actually like I only got introduced into concept art during school, during my first year. Like I sort of know what it was, but not fully. I did not fully comprehend that it was an actual job. That how big it was, and then the people involved. Like I only heard of Feng Zhu like halfway through my first year. So
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know, so yeah, there was really it was actually quite interesting. And then yeah, halfway through the first year. Like my school, because I was in the Netherlands, we had some really good connections with Guerrilla Games in Amsterdam, and there were a bunch of people there that gave us a seminar, specifically Jori Rosman and Joseph Noel. And Jori worked at Guerrilla Games for 3 years,
Mhm.
and he's now a freelance concept artist. And they gave a short seminar on AAA concept art. And at the time, this was about 3 weeks after I started using Photoshop. So I was a total noob.
Yeah.
But they really opened my eyes into like what was possible, and also because they'd been to the same school that I was attending. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, that's where I want to go. I want to go to Guerrilla. I wanna enter this level of concept art, and just this is the moment that I'm gonna start fighting for it. And it was funny because actually during that seminar, as I said, like I was a total noob in Photoshop, and I had to really deliver something good as a final result. And actually ended up doing that in a program called Google SketchUp, using that as my tool instead of Photoshop, which I didn't know at the time yet.
Mhm.
And I actually managed to pick up SketchUp in a couple days, and then make something that conveyed the story that I wanted to tell, which was the assignment they gave us at the time.
Cool.
Yeah, and actually that's where it all started.
So
Year and a half.
you were working more in 3D to start with than 2D, or
Well, yeah, I mean, I started out with using SketchUp that like halfway through my first year. I was always a painter and a drawer,
Mhm.
and then I learned Photoshop afterwards. And actually, like how it goes when you first start Photoshop, you make these really weird things. Like
Yeah.
everything is super atrocious.
What
But
does this button do? Yeah.
yeah, but I somehow I felt that 3D felt a lot more natural to me, because I always used to play with Legos. Legos was my childhood, and
Yeah.
SketchUp is just like Legos, and that's always the way I used it as well. It's just I did a lot of kit bashing. I still do.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, a year and a half after I was introduced to AAA concept art, I managed to secure myself a an internship at Guerrilla Games.
Wow.
Um, like I I fought for it. I fought for it really hard. I don't know if you heard the story that I told at the
The rejection, yeah, yeah. This, if people went at industry workshops, then you can probably enlighten them on your tragic path to glory. Yeah.
well, it was kind of funny. Like I told this on stage at industry workshops in the panel discussion. Um, Basically, I sent them my super bad portfolio. Like, hey, I know this is really bad, but I really want to join, and could I please do an art test so I can prove myself? And they were like, well, um, well, they thought that my portfolio just wasn't good enough to even do an art test. But the thing is, they sent me the wrong email,
Yeah.
right? So they first sent me the email that yeah, sure, your portfolio looks awesome, and come and do the art test. And I was super happy, of course. And then 2 hours later, I got another email saying like, hey, whoops, we made a mistake. Actually, your portfolio isn't that good, and yeah, please.
Please don't do the art test.
Yeah, please don't do an art test. So the thing is that, as I said at Industry Workshops as well, like I was really professional about it, but I didn't know at the time I was professional about it.
Mm.
Because what I did, I basically just asked for feedback. I was like, all right, well, I'm sorry to hear that, and sorry for the mix-up, but do you have any feedback? Something that I should work on? And yeah, something happened, and somehow that touched them, and they sent another email like, yeah, you can do an art test, but just know that your portfolio shows that you don't really have the skills to be able to get the internship.
Mm.
Because they also had a really select number of places. Like they only had, and this sounds like a lot, 8 places, but I think there were like 40 or 50 people applying.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So and then funny thing was that immediately after that, I was about to go on a holiday for 2 weeks in Greece. And so I just decided to bring my laptop along and practice my photo bashing skills and my painting skills and my
Mm.
Photoshop skills. And when I came back, I did the art test, and I was one of the best artists they had seen that year. So
Wow.
yeah, that's how I got in. I was really
Awesome.
lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, and everything actually evolved from there. I mean, at Guerrilla Games, I was fully introduced to concept art as a profession and all the players involved and
Mm.
what it really meant to do that sort of job. I worked on environments for Horizon Zero Dawn. I worked on a lot of props. I did a bit of UI as well. That's also a thing. Like, if you ever do an internship,
Mm.
always say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Because there were people around me that were like, no, I don't want to do UI. I just want to do this. And the funny thing is that just by saying yes to everything, I got to learn so much more, and I got in
Yeah.
contact with so many more awesome people, and it just, it's really good to be open like that, I think.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think it's just part. Obviously, we were talking at industry workshops. Was one of the questions I think one of the guys asked at the back was there's a whole system where people think that interns are overworked and people aren't getting paid enough, but I think, or as my view, coming from a bit older school way of thinking, that you have to pay your dues. Like there is a process you have to go through to, pay your respect to the people above you and take on the work that you don't always want to do. But like you said, it's all a learning process, and I take it that's your view as well. That you really have to pay your dues in the company to move up.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I do think so. I mean, a bunch of people say this as well. Like, if you want to go work at Bungie and you want to do these amazing mood paintings, you better be really good because they have people like Jamie Jones working there, and like
Yeah.
who are you that you say that you can beat that guy on his skills, right?
That's it, and it's the same obviously when people talk about they want to get into stuff like Magic the Gathering art, and then you're saying well that's great, but then you're going up against people like Cynthia Shepherd, like Titus Linter, Noah Bradley, the list goes on.
Hmm.
You've got to be beating out those guys every time for the art directors to be looking even in your direction. So it's I think people more now think that they can get by with Photoshop doing most of the work and they won't have to put them as much an effort to get involved, but it's still even once you hit your internship, you work even harder. It's not like the work stops. Like that's just the entry. That's just the starting line. From
Yeah,
there, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
And then again, working through Gorilla. How long were you there? Was it just the one project you worked on? Was it just Horizon, and then you moved?
Well, when I joined. When was that? I joined right before Killzone Shadowfall released.
Right.
So, but obviously they were already working on the pre-production phase of their new project by then.
Mhm.
But I did see the crunch time, which I think also was really important because I experienced it not firsthand, but
Mhm.
like I was there at the time they were crunching, and I could sort of see the results and see how people dealt with that as well.
Mhm.
And then I did a bunch of DLC work for that. Of course, this was all with all my my classmates who were there as well as interns. Like it wasn't just me.
Mhm.
Just to be clear on that, I mean we had a really awesome team of people.
Yeah.
Basically, Gorilla just gets people from all the schools, and they stay for most stay for 6 months or 4 months actually,
Mhm.
and then some they keep on if possible. Because of course, like it takes a bit of time to get into get up to the level of quality that they expect from you, and then
Yeah.
that's when you start producing. And all this usually takes like 2 months, I suppose.
Mhm.
So if you manage to be able to stay on, that's a lot better for both you and Gorilla, of course, because you
Mhm.
can actually start producing some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So in the end, I stayed on for actually a year.
Mhm.
All through the summer of the next year as well,
Mhm.
when I moved from intern to trainee,
Yeah.
which was really awesome. I got to do a lot more stuff as well, and yeah, it was just a really cool time. I really hate that I had to leave, but I had to leave to basically finish up school because
Mhm.
I by then entered my fourth year,
Yep.
and yeah, there were some full-time projects that I just needed to complete in order to finish my school.
Yeah. You want to focus that part of your life and then get that out of the way, so you can then move on to the grander stuff that you're doing now. Obviously, that's taking up your attention. Was that an immediate move once you left Gorilla and once you'd finished your education? Did you move straight to Cloud Imperium, or did they approach you, or how did that come about?
Well, once I left Gorilla, as I said, like I entered my fourth year and I started freelancing.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you've seen my Facebook banner, the piece with the big spaceship with the ring.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Right.
Yep.
So that piece was done 2 weeks after I left Gorilla,
Wow. Yeah.
for as a freelance gig.
Mhm.
Um, and then I did a bunch of other stuff after that as well, including, of course, my graduation project, which
Mhm.
like it for me on the conceptual side of things, it was really awesome. But the images that I then produced weren't necessarily, like really good images or something. But
Yeah.
like it was a really technical, really scientific research, and I really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I actually got a lot of attention through it. There were about 5 magazines that wrote articles on me in my own country. I got nominated for a couple prizes
Wow.
just because of the depth of it
Yeah.
and the novelty of it, because it was a VR thing as well.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I was freelancing all the way through that, and then I actually applied. Of course, like when you graduate, you apply at like 150 companies, and I applied at Cloud Imperium Games, I think 3 times, and then in the end, they actually contacted me directly without ever knowing that I that I applied, which was really funny.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, they work and they were interested in working with me.
Mhm.
Um, and so I started working on Star Citizen, I think a year ago now.
Mhm.
No, almost a year ago.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, they initially hired me to do um, like more like the prop side of things, and like
Mhm.
they have ship components and weapons, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I really wanted to work on environments
Mhm.
because environments for me is just combining everything into one sort of image. It basically takes everything from lighting, design, storytelling, and I really like that
Yeah.
part. So I really pushed to be able to do that, and I did a lot of environment work on the narrative campaign, of which I cannot say anything, of course, because it hasn't been revealed yet. But that was a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and I'm now doing environment work again on some of the content that will be released a little sooner.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like other than that, I've done the rover design, of course, which I showed at industry workshops.
Yep.
I'm gonna do some more vehicle design in the future, and it's just a lot of fun because again, at Cloud Imperium Games, like I don't really say no to anything, so I get to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I did some UI design as well, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's just a lot of fun that way, I think.
Yeah.
I really like doing, a variety of things. I know a lot of people just want to do their own thing, but
Yeah.
for me, being able to create a world like from various viewpoints, so to speak, like
Mhm.
I think that brings so much more depth, and you can like I don't know, I just really enjoy doing that, just doing everything sort of.
Yeah. And is that something that you emulate in your personal work as well, or do you experiment more in your personal stuff? Or is it kind of similar to what you're doing industry wise?
Well, actually, if you have a look at my sketchbooks,
Hmm.
which I rarely show to people, but they're actually full of medieval castles
Oh, cool.
and character work.
So a total switch going for sci-fi fantasy then.
Well, funnily enough, I don't know if you've seen the Horizon Zero Dawn like gameplay footage,
Yeah,
but the environment work and the assets are in a way they're really medieval. Actually, they're not really sci-fi.
yeah,
And so actually, at Gorilla, I did a lot of work that was influenced a lot um, by that style. And
hmm,
then here in Star Citizen, I do and actually, when I was doing that, I did a lot of sci-fi work in my free time.
hmm,
And then here I do a lot of sci-fi work at work, so I do fancy stuff in my free time.
yeah,
So yeah, again, like I really like that variety. And I think that if you really like design and like storytelling,
hmm,
um, and you can do that with like principles, with foundations, you can basically apply to any sort of narrative, any sort of field. So
hmm,
I mean, at some point, when I do, go to another company or something,
yeah.
I'll probably be working on something completely different just for that reason as well.
Yeah, it might always be related to the kind of sci-fi genre, spaceship stuff, because there's only so many people who do that kind of stuff and do it well. So obviously the next game you could be doing set in, I don't know, middle-aged China or something like that. It's, it could be any gambits where that's obviously where your reference comes in. You obviously talk about using a lot of kind of photo techniques, and SketchUp obviously is involved in that, but it's more 3D. I know when I went to see Giles Ketting's talk
Mm-hmm.
on Ashton Falls, he had a lot of images where he talked about the heavy use of photography and photo bashing.
Yeah.
And then of course there's also that it brings me into this thing where I was going to start talking about was Shadi Safari does this talk called is it the Pursuit of Increasing Awesomeness, where he talks about how there is a way to get to the top of the concept art trail as quick as you can, and that does involve integrating 3D and photo bashing. Do you think, probably even the newer generation now of concept artists, that this is something that younger people or people coming into the industry starting off need to really apply to their portfolio?
Well, that's a really, really hard question.
Hmm.
I mean, I have a lot of people that come to me with the same sort of question, like, "Hey, I want to break into an industry. What should I do?" Because
Hmm.
that's basically the question, right?
Yep.
Uh, the way I see it, there's basically two types of people in the industry. There's the type of people that do one thing and do one thing really, really well, and then they get hired for that one thing and they get jobs for that one thing. And then there's the people that do a lot of things, and also they sort of start doing the stuff that companies would like to see. They start doing the stuff that uh, you know would get them jobs maybe a little easier. And I'm one of those latter people, but I know a lot of people that are the former, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the best examples of recent times, I think, is Kazil Salim with
Yeah.
his cars.
Hmm.
He does his car stuff really, really well, and that's how he got a job at what is it, Need for Speed, I think, or
Yeah, the EA
um,
based company, I think. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway,
Hmm.
but he does that, and um, I mean, so it really depends on what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. If you want to just do your own thing,
Hmm.
then keep doing that. Keep doing that a lot until you're good enough that you can get a job with that.
Yep.
But it might take a while, you know.
Hmm.
It really might take a while, and I think that if you do want to get a job in the industry, I mean, pretty much all the companies that I've seen are looking for people that have 3D skills.
Yep.
Are looking for people that can photo bash over a 3D blockout
Hmm.
and use their knowledge of light and color and materials and narrative.
Hmm.
That's really important
Yep.
to create a compelling image.
Yeah.
Like all those skills combined. So I think like if you really want a studio job and you want to get like an internship or a junior position,
Hmm.
that is the best way. But as I said, like I'm there's a lot of ways to get in the industry, and this is just my opinion.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
don't take this as a rule.
No. No.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get into a certain company, see what they are looking for, see what sort of skills they're looking for. I mean, CCP, for instance, right?
Hmm.
Eve Online. They're concept artists. They do texture work as well.
Yeah.
So if you show that you can do texture work and that you can do a lot of that you can do really good low poly models because
Yep.
that's what they use as well.
Mm.
That's the way to go for them. But again, like it really depends on where you want to go.
Because every company has a different approach to making art and different pipelines, and
Yep.
yeah, and it's probably you'll find the same as that Gorilla and Cloud Imperium are both AAA producing companies with millions of dollars to put behind production and whatever else, but even within the same two companies, there will be completely different ways of approaching a pipeline, start to finish, um, crunch, all that kind of stuff,
hmm
meetings, and then again moving from Gorilla to Cloud Imperium, do you find that it is roughly the same atmosphere, or there huge jarring changes you found in different companies, or
Well, like on the base levels, it's quite the same. I mean, obviously it's different because Gorillas in Amsterdam is a really different vibe, different kind of people.
yeah,
Um, the way they approach things as well. I mean, Gorilla has been around for a while.
hmm
Foundry 42 was founded specifically well, it was founded like 2 or 3 years ago, I think.
yeah,
And back then it was just 8 people that started, and now we're 180 people. You know, you can feel that, you can see that, and
hmm
but not in a bad way necessarily. I mean,
yeah,
there's so many really talented people from all over the place.
yep,
While at Gorilla, you really had that sort of old core that were there that have been working together for 10 years, and
hmm
that brought his whole own vibe. And from because that's I go to a lot of events. I mean, I've been to industry workshops, but also to IFCC. I'm going to Trojan Horse next week.
yep,
I've been at Trojan Horse last year, and I tried to talk to people to find out, what the other companies are like. And basically, they say, well, every company is different, and
yeah,
that's I think also a really good thing, and also a really important thing that if you want to get into a company, make sure to ask the people that work there like what the company's like.
yeah, yeah. Again, because like you said, it's the reality versus the dream. I know my previous experience for me, I was talking to a guy who works at Rockstar North, just down the road in Edinburgh, and
hmm
obviously he's worked here since they were DMA back in the day in Dundee, making the 2D version of Grand Theft Auto, and he was saying that a lot of these are passion projects for people. The companies start with maybe 10 people, but now I think they employ a staff in Edinburgh like 300, 400 people.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, eventually it starts crossing that barrier between a passion project and into reality. But he was saying that he finds that people are always like, it must be great to work at Rockstar. You must, have pool tables in every room, and you get 5 hour lunches, and you get to play Grand Theft Auto all day. And he's like, well, no, it's like a small cubicle that I sit at. I get a pile of work in my desk when I walk in. This much I've got to do by the time I leave. And it's like any other job, you go in, you work, you go home. But know that people, he tries to disillusion anybody that it's a horrible job, or like you're going to be mind numbing doing it. But it's just like, at the end of the day, it's work. It is a career. You're going to have to go in there and do a job. You're not getting paid to muck about. So
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. And as with all jobs, I mean, not everything you do might be as fun as the other thing,
yeah,
but that's also why it's really important that you keep trying a lot of things, right? Because you never know what you might discover. Um, yeah, but also by the way, on the pipeline thing and like what you should do, I know a lot of people have been asking me for recommendations getting into Foundry and stuff,
mm-hmm.
and the problem is that a lot of those people are really really good and talented and good friends of mine,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have a lot of 3D work. And I know, for instance, that my art director, he will only consider people if they have 3D work
Yeah,
because in Star Citizen, for instance, we have really complex systems.
yeah,
You basically can open every door, you can pick up any object,
mm-hmm.
and in order to make that work, we are building everything to the metric system that has been put in place, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to be precise up until like millimeters sometimes,
Yeah.
with things like handles, but also, well, everything basically.
So many moving parts. Yeah.
Yeah, so for instance, I'm working on some mood paints right now, and I built the entire room that I'm doing because basically design build a room with like cubes, and then it's for me it's to like give it a certain vibe, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know how other people do this, but I rebuilt that entire room like fully, like till the centimeter,
Mm-hmm.
as design wanted, and I will not change anything. I will only add things to make it work, but I will
Yeah.
not like blow out a wall or something because in the end, it's that room that I'm designing for, and in order to do that, you do need 3D skills. You
Yeah,
won't be able to do that
yeah,
to that level of precision with just 2D.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, it
I
was. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I was just recently on a couple of days ago, because I just discovered Ashthorpe when I got to industry workshops. So I started listening to the Collective podcast, and the guy Carell, he was interviewing recently, was talking about Fusion 360, and he had a saying that he wanted to try and coin a phrase, but he was saying that to build industrial projects or industrial pieces of art within games, you need industrial tools. So he
I
took.
I really don't agree with that.
Oh, there you go. There, see that
Yeah,
objective
yeah, yeah.
there.
No,
So
I was listening to that as well, and like, no offense to Kirill. I mean, I understand what he means, but I think that um, you need an engineering mindset,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And I think that if you have the engineering mindset, you can do it with a lot of tools. You know, certain tools will do it better,
Yeah.
but I think that you like great friend of mine, Alex Noax. I don't know if you know him,
Yeah. Mhm.
but he makes the craziest vehicles, and he makes them in like regular old school polygonal modeling
Yeah.
tools, right?
Mhm.
So I don't really, but he understands, mechanics. He understands how to make things work and sensible, and he doesn't necessarily use, engineering software or something.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Uh, on the other hand, though, I use Fusion every single day for the last 3 months.
mhm.
So I know like Fusion really well, and
Mhm.
I've done some tutorials now as well.
Mhm.
Um, and I do agree that Fusion really gives great insight into how engineers design things.
Yep.
But I think ultimately it comes down to the mindset, because you can give a tool to any how you say that, like any regular person,
Yeah. Yep.
but that doesn't mean like that you can actually get some good stuff out of it. You really need the engineering mindset and not necessarily the tools.
Yeah. Definitely.
But again, like, no offense to Kirill or anything, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah, and it's the same when you talk about the photo bashing techniques and the 3D stuff. I mean, the people who I've maybe dealt with throughout my past who are more traditional painters have said, of course, they use the word cheating, which obviously angers a lot of concept artists because they talk about how it's more just because it's specific to that industry. So obviously, 3D and photo bashing serves a purpose within a pipeline in a company. You're looking to produce art as quickly as possible and as believable as possible. So yeah, I mean, again, we just talked about it, but you can say again that you are of the opinion that these things are essential for a modern day concept artist.
Well, yes, in a certain way, but there's a really big pitfall there,
Mhm.
and I've been trying to explain this to a lot of people,
Mhm.
but there's a really big difference between features or tools
Mhm.
and principles
Mhm.
or mindset, as I just called it.
Yeah.
Is that anyone can use photo bashing, but
Yeah.
not everyone can use it in the way that it's supposed to. Photo bashing can be a really powerful tool if you know how to use it, and it's really powerful to um, like create mood paintings, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if you want to do a fully working design,
Mhm.
like a car design or something, you can't photo bash that, like tr- not to every like inside outside, everything. You can do the outside
Yeah.
as a mood painting, as a style reference,
Yep.
but to have that true control, you need other tools, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really like just knowing the tools won't be enough. You need to know why you use the tools. You need to know why you design things, and you really need to know the principles of design and the principles of what you're actually doing before or actually during you start the tools. But you can learn
Mhm.
those principles while using the tools as well.
Yeah.
I hope this makes sense, but
No, no, no. I understand this. I mean, I was listening to myself a couple of weeks back to Things Design podcast, and he was talking about how he can see in people's portfolio who are introducing stuff like photo bash and 3D when their foundation skills of perspective of color are not as solid as they can be. Then you can see through the paint and seeing that they've used the technique, but they've not understood how to use it. So it feels hollow almost because it's just I know what you're saying. Like I'm trying to say it as well, and it's hard to specifically say what you're going to say. But if you lack the foundation skills at the start, which is color, light, perspective, texture, tone,
yeah,
then putting a picture or a photo over a painting isn't going to make it. You know.
Well, true, but the problem I have with that is that I hear a lot of people. Again, this is my opinion, but I hear a lot of people talking about foundation, foundation, foundation,
Yeah.
and to me, the way that I picked that up is like, oh shit, I should go back to like traditional painting and like drawing with charcoal. I don't think that's true. I think you can learn these principles with any tool that includes these principles. It's not just traditional drawing skills or whatever. It's about focusing your attention on the specific principles that you want to learn. Really, really. Well, like an example would be that when I do an environment painting, that I want to have it. I want to have a certain atmosphere in there. I tend to look at other like art, concept art, or pictures that have that same atmosphere, and then I try to like analyze how they do that with lighting, with composition, and then I try to use that into my own paintings. But basically, what I do is like I learn about lighting and all that other like all the other principles by really analyzing and looking at the principles, but not necessarily. It's not necessarily about the tools. You can learn it with any tool. I know, for instance, that Noman, like the school, they teach anatomy classes in ZBrush, which I think is really good, but also in clay. Because being able to do the same thing with different tools,
Yep.
that's when you can really get to the principles. As I explained it, are you bilingual by any chance? Do you speak any other language than English?
No, just English and bad English, really. So.
Fair enough. Well, for the people out there that do speak more than two languages, this might be a good analogy. It's basically that once you talk more than one language, and I talk two languages and two half languages, but you don't think about words anymore, but you think about the meanings of those words, right?
Yeah.
And then you pick the word in the language that you're speaking at that time, but your thinking goes from the word to the meaning of the word, because you have different words of expressing the same feeling, the same story,
Yeah.
the same narrative. And the same thing goes for the tools, I think. So if you know how to paint something with traditional paint, but you also know how to draw it, or you know how to model it in SketchUp, you know how to model it in Fusion or in traditional modeling software,
Yeah.
that's when you really step away from the tool, but really focus on the principles of what you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
So I really advise people to try out all the tools,
As
like
much as you
everything.
can, yeah. And then
Yeah,
obviously as you work along, you can maybe even just refine that to a more kind of try to think centered attention of where you want your work to go, while taking everything you've learned along the way and making that as perfect as possible.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely. And
yeah.
I know that like people like Ben Morrow like to switch things up all the time. Like he uses a variety of programs just for that reason. I know that even Vitaly Bulgarov does that, because he uses CAD software in his professional work, and then in his free time he just jumps back to XSI and ZBrush.
Yeah. Again.
And I think that it's also for that reason. It's to refresh your mind, right, and to not get pulled into the tools and the tricks and the cheats. But yeah,
Yeah. Because you can kind of stay in a bubble, just Photoshop or just Adobe, and that obviously shelters you for everything else around you that hinders you from learning more.
hmm
And like learning Fusion, like learning CAD. And again, you're talking about getting in the industry. I mean, we can just brush on this towards the end now. Is that you had a big talk at Industry Workshops 2016. For the guys who weren't there, you obviously couldn't go into the full explanation or the full talk because we don't have the time. But just kind of the cliff notes around, where you were wanting to go with that, what you were trying to convey to people during your talk.
yeah. So the industry workshops talk is really about that last sort of point that I talked about here, like seeing things in different ways.
Yeah.
Because I really think that if you focus on certain elements and then you try to see, like basically look at the same object but just with a different mindset, mentally seeing things in different ways, you can actually do the same thing as you would when modeling things in different software. So one of the examples that I gave was I showed this mushroom with some weird bubbles on it. And basically, if you wanna paint that mushroom with like acrylics, like how would you approach it? Well, how would you set it up? If you wanna model it in ZBrush, how would you approach that? If you wanna look if you look at it from an engineer's perspective, like what are those weird bubbles? How does this mushroom work? What is the structure? What's the material? Um, and basically, yeah, just keep your eyes open. Another thing that I do a lot, yeah, you could call it a trick, but you might know that like the brain fills in 80% of our vision, and only 20% is what we really see with our eyes. The rest is just like filled in. So you
Uh-huh.
basically you see like two spots in front of you. This is
Mhm.
just like biology, right?
Right.
And then the rest, like your eyes, basically they go from left to right to up to down. They have these weird movements. Unless you're talking to someone, then
Mhm.
it's more focused. But
Mhm.
your eyes blink everywhere, right?
Right.
And then they use that information to fill in the image of whatever you're seeing the rest of the time.
Mhm.
But the funny thing is that by doing that, you actually don't pick up on that much stuff, right?
Right.
And now, by knowing these principles, you can play with it
Mhm.
because you can actually do that in a really conscious way. Instead of just randomly blinking around, you can consciously blink around and you pick up on a lot more information. So when I'm walking through the park, I actually consciously look everywhere,
Mhm.
right? And then suddenly you see this squirrel on top of a tree branch with really beautiful rim lights, and then
Mhm.
you see this bird there, and this
Mhm.
trash bin with like a really cool narrative of why the trash bin looks the way it looks.
Yeah.
Like it might just be a trash bin, but if you ever, want to paint a trash bin, you will remember that because you've consciously looked at it.
Yeah.
It's things like that is really cool. Another thing that I do a lot is that when I'm waiting for a train, for instance, I mean, waiting is the most boring thing ever. So I just play games with my consciousness and with my like observation. So what I do is I sit on a bench or I stand somewhere and I just try to think about what it would look like seeing myself in 3D, in third person,
Mhm.
just like placing a camera in 3D, right?
Yeah.
2 meters behind you. Like,
Yeah.
what would you see? What would you pick up on? Or conscious, just try to think about like what would it be like if you weren't there.
Mhm.
What do you pick up on? Just focus on individual conversations, or even like try to change the lighting of the scene that you're now standing in.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. And those are just really simple games, but I really love just thinking about that consciously.
Yeah.
And once you start doing that a lot, you're basically going on a path that might bring you to a thing called mindfulness.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's this. It's basically it comes down from Buddhism and yoga,
Mhm.
and it's basically a state of being in which you do not pass any judgment. You are in a pure observational mode, which is kind of funny because that's really a thing that artists do a lot when they're studying a certain object.
Mhm.
And I can really recommend looking into it, by the way. But
Mhm.
basically, what you do is you just it's like like a way of meditation,
Mhm.
but it's trying to observe things without passing judgment on them, and then you sort of get down to the core of what those things really are, whether they are thoughts or actually things you see,
Yeah.
and you learn a lot. And well, long story short, that was, I mean, that was my industry workshop talk is trying to see things in a different way and then doing that to learn from it.
Yeah. So
Uh,
again, you're just talking about more engaging your mind's eye and seeing the world in a different light than most people who just walk through their life. You're trying to observe as much as you can as you walk through it. You're not just using peripheral vision just to be aware. You're using it to engage with your surroundings, basically.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, and to break things down. I mean, a thing that we did at Gorilla, and this is basically what got me going on this whole path,
Mhm.
is they paid a lot of attention um, to texture, to materials,
Mhm.
right? And especially to weathering and the way certain materials weather than others, right?
Mhm.
And in order to understand that, you had to observe. So we would just go into Amsterdam, the city,
Mhm.
and we would just look at all the weathering and all the damage and all the materials that we could see.
Yeah.
And you start picking up on so many things just because you're super focused looking at weathering, damage, history of objects, right? And suddenly this city that you've been walking through, dozens of times, it you see it in a new light, and there's so much information that you never saw that you can suddenly pick up on. And it's the same thing with suddenly looking everywhere when you're walking through a park.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff in this world that you can pick up on if you know how to look or how to find it.
I mean, like, it was the same when I talked to my contact at Rockstar. He was saying that the couple of holidays that he went the first couple of years when he was doing texture, he was going around small cities in Italy and Rome and taking pictures like as close as he could to like walls and buildings and wooden textures and doors. And when he came back, his wife was complaining that they had no photos of them. It was all just you could have rebuilt a city with the amount of photos he had. They just random pieces, stone it. But that's the interest you take as an artist, and you talk about observing. That's art at its core, really, is observation. I mean, the amount of stuff through life drawing or still life drawing, it's all about basically observing something and recreating it on a medium, paper, charcoal, whatever you want, or digital. So yeah, it's just, I think it's more just getting back to the core of being an artist, like you said. Like again, people will say guys like us or like yourself are using tools that take away from traditional, but I think any medium that portrays an observation is still art in its core. It doesn't matter what you're using, it's still, you're still being as traditional as you can be. So
yeah, absolutely, couldn't agree more. And also, have you listened to the Collective podcast with Sir Richard Taylor?
No, I haven't heard that one yet, no.
All right, go listen to that as well, because they talk a lot about this stuff. I used some of his quotes in my industry workshops talk as well.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Nice. Well, that's a come up to an hour, so we'll let you go, Jort. I'm sure you've got a busy day ahead of you, or whatever you're doing today anyway. It'll probably be more exciting than sitting talking to me anyway.
I had a lot of fun. Don't worry about it.
That's awesome. But just obviously on behalf of myself and Colin and the Digital Artcast, we want to thank you for coming on and sparing your time. I know you're probably going to be extremely busy, but we might get you on, later down the line and have a follow-up, and again, we'll post this up online. The guys who are listening, we have just submitted to iTunes and got approved, so we're going to be in iTunes as of tomorrow morning. Again, you can see us on YouTube and check our previous one. Me and Jort were talking about industry workshops in London. We both attended. We just done a podcast, and we just launched it. It will be the one previous to this, on all the guys that I went and saw and talked to during the event. And next week, me and Colin will be back to regular and just talking to me again about everything that is digital and concept art. So thank you, Jort, and thank you guys for tuning in. Speak to you later. Bye.